Hey, I was checking out the SpaceX prospectus the other day, and prospectus is a document that when a private company wants to go public, they have to file with the SEC to explain all the stuff that investors might need to know, right? Anyways, I was going through their prospectus, and it kind of reminded me of a very funny comedy skit by Key and Peele, where so there's a bunch of guys and they're just doing their thing when suddenly this really weird, like, demon-looking dude just shows up out of nowhere and tries to sell them something called a God drug. He goes, "You want to do some of this God drug?" And they're like, "What the hell is that?" And he actually delivers like the most unhinged sales pitch ever, right? Just listing a bunch of horrors with no upside, right? Like it says, so this drug, it takes your greatest fears and insecurities and it gives them teeth and arms and it locks you in a room with them from which you cannot escape. And also just a bunch of other really scary stuff, right? And the drug itself is just shards of glass that you gotta tuck under your eyelid so it bleeds into your brain, right? And the guys are horrified, obviously, except for one dude who keeps saying, "Yeah, if you let the man finish, if you just let him finish, he's gonna get to the upside, I'm sure." But of course, the pitch just keeps getting worse and worse. And then the cherry on top, this dealer guy goes, "And when you just can't take it anymore, you're going to start pooping out of your mouth." Like literally pooping out of your mouth. And at this point, this dude, just absolute legend, is overwhelmed with enthusiasm for some bizarre reason, right? And he runs over, and grabs a piece of drug and shoves it in his own eye, saying, if people really go through this, the high must be amazing. Now, keep that logic in mind, because when you read the SpaceX prospectus, it kind of feels like they're selling you the God drug, because it just keeps getting worse and worse, like every page. And yet, for some bizarre reason, people could not wait to shove the glass in their own eyes. It's like investors are like, yeah, if the fundamentals are that bad, then the high must be amazing, right? The upside must be infinite. I mean, what kind of a twisted logic is that, right? And I think it's important that we talk about this because it's bigger than just SpaceX. It's bigger than just Elon. It's a broader shift in investor mentality and how financial markets work, right? Because here you're dealing with a super risky asset. I'm talking about the SpaceX stock, obviously. It's just risk piled on top of risk, piled on top of stupid risk, right? And normally when something is risky, they're supposed to give you a discount. That's the way it works. They're supposed to give you a discount, not put a $2 trillion price tag on it, right? When something is risky, you gotta be able to comfort yourself by saying, yeah, so what? It's risky. I got it cheap. I don't care. But no one with a functioning brain ever utters the sentence that, yeah, I bought this sketchy thing, but hey, at least I didn't get a discount. Yeah, it's super risky, but at least I paid a lot of money for it. The laws of logic simply do not allow the word "at least" in that sentence. So if you had to condense like the entire history of SpaceX into a single number, it would be $41.3 billion in accumulated losses. Like if you took every cent of profit that they ever made and subtracted like every dollar of loss, you're going to end up with a $41 billion hole. But can we say right off the bat, can we say that it's a bad thing? Well, not necessarily. It depends. It depends on where that money went, right? It depends what they spent it on. Like maybe they spent it to build, really useful assets that are going to pay off big time in the future. Except that's really not the case with SpaceX. I mean, their losses are just bad losses. They spend that money on stuff that depreciate fast, on stuff that become obsolete fast. Like Amazon. Take Amazon, for example. Amazon had big losses too, but they were building physical infrastructure here on Earth. Like they were building physical warehouses that last, 60 years? Decades? Or when a regular internet provider, when they dig up the street and lay down those fiber optic cables, I mean that fiber is going to be good for decades, right? But not so much with SpaceX. I mean, they put up those Starlink satellites up into the space, but they die fast. Like they last like 5 years or so, and then they burn up in the atmosphere and fall into the ocean, and they need to be constantly replaced, right? And so where did the rest of that $41 billion go? Well, into building big data centers and paying electricity bills and buying those NVIDIA chips. But, hardware in the AI space becomes obsolete, like, every 18 months? So, and basically, for what? Because basically AI gives you zero pricing power, right? Because it's pretty much a commodity at this point. The moment that you try to jack up the price, your users are just gonna hop over to the next, free chatbot. Pretty much the same thing, right? Gets the job done. So it's not like they've used that $41 billion to build like permanent assets, more like recurring, ongoing cost. And then you got the Starship. They poured a ton of money into developing it. But I mean, even if they get it to work somehow, even if they figure it out technologically, I mean, is there going to even be a market for it? Is there going to be enough demand for it? I mean, again, it's super risky bet with no clear roadmap to real return on investment, right? So here you got a company that's overall unprofitable, and they lose like around $5 billion a year. It's basically part of their business model at this point. I mean, losing cash is what they do. And they're getting much better at it because in the first quarter of 2026, they posted a net loss of $4.3 billion. That is 8 times larger than Q1 2025. And if they keep going at this pace, we're looking at something like $17 billion for the full year 2026. That is massively bigger than anything that we've seen for previous years. And you can see how some people could think that's those numbers are somehow relevant, since the whole point of a business is to make money, which of course is a pretty old-fashioned way of looking at things. You know, nowadays the primary function of a business could be to, I don't know, give meaning to your life, expand your horizons. Profits don't really matter like they used to, right? Now, SpaceX's revenue is growing nicely. It was at $10 billion just 2 years ago. Now it's around $19 billion. It's an average of 33% a year. But even that comes with massive caveats. First, I mean, the revenue growth is solid, but in no way does it justify a $2 trillion valuation. I mean, that is a multiple of 107x. 107x, that is, I don't even know what to call it. I mean, for context, a normal mature company trades at a multiple of what, 5 to 10x, and a high growth tech company trades at 10 to 20x. 107x, that's just, it means that investors are paying $107 for every $1 of revenue that the company generates. And second, that revenue has a ton of fragility built into it. So basically, to 20 to 25% of all the revenue is coming from one big customer, which, you guessed it, is the US government, right? And it's not a good thing when most of your money comes from a couple of clients. It makes you vulnerable, because what if they change their mind? I mean, especially government. I mean, administrations change. Different people come to power and they got different priorities, and they might decide they don't like the space anymore. And then there goes a fourth of your revenue, you know? And SpaceX, in their prospectus, they admitted themselves, they call it termination at the government's convenience. They've got like a couple of pages going into detail on that, about this particular risk factor. And it gets worse, because SpaceX just signed this deal with Anthropic, and they're getting paid $1.25 billion a month until 2029. So to put that into perspective, their whole AI business only made $3.2 billion in all of 2025, and just around $800 million in Q1 2026. So this one Anthropic deal is going to be a massive chunk of the revenue, you know. But it's not really locked in. Either side can walk away with just 90 days notice. And so they could lose this revenue stream basically overnight. And the problem is that in these kinds of businesses, you can't just turn around and find a new customer. I mean, these deals, these government contracts, and these billion-dollar AI deals, they're slow, they're complicated, they're relationship heavy, and they involve a lot of, I don't know, technical checks and security stuff and legal negotiations. It's the whole thing, right? And third, the thing is that their growth seems to be running out of steam. It's pretty much capped at this point. So let me explain. First off, where does that revenue, where does that money come from? Well, only 20% of that money, that revenue, comes from the rockets, right? So SpaceX basically gives space rights. Like customers come knocking, hey, can you take this thing into orbit for us? And they say, yeah, sure, no problem, which is a good business to have. But the problem is that there's really not much room left to grow there. They've already captured some 85% of the entire commercial launch market. I mean, it's a niche market. The market is tiny, all right? And I mean, there are only so many satellites that governments and companies want to put into space each year. And the other thing is that most of their launches is internal, right? They take their own satellites into space. It's like when you drive yourself to work, right? So they don't get paid for them, for those internal launches. They're their own biggest customer. And it's not a one-off thing. I mean, those satellites that we talked about, they need to be constantly replaced, right? And some 60% of their revenue comes from selling their internet service. That is the part of their business, Starlink, that is the part of their business that's actually making good money, right? And it's basically the only profitable division in the whole company. The problem is that this one too has limited growth potential. They're already, running out of rich customers that live in the middle of nowhere. So now they're trying to sell internet to poor customers that live in the middle of nowhere. And when you want the poor people to buy your stuff, what you do is you charge less and you settle for lower profit margins, right? So back in 2023, their average revenue per user was around $99 a month. Now it's all the way down to $66, right? That is a 1/3 drop in less than 3 years. And those places that are not in the middle of nowhere, well, you already got good old fiber internet, which is hard to compete with. And on top of that, Starlink has to play sugar daddy to XAI, which is currently the AI segment of SpaceX. It's basically subsidizing the AI cash burn. The problem is that XAI is not particularly good at AI. Their lunch is being eaten by Meta, by Google, by Microsoft, by Anthropic every single day. All these strong competitors, and SpaceX is less profitable than almost all of them because it's flat out unprofitable. So the AI segment alone posted a $1.2 billion EBITDA loss last year. And EBITDA is a metric that companies use to feel good about themselves, because it inflates their earnings by ignoring real costs. And this one is not even standard EBITDA. It's adjusted EBITDA, which is like a more made up and more feel-good version of EBITDA. And it's still looking bad. It's like if you look ugly, even with tons of makeup and 3 Instagram filters on. That's how bad it is. So overall, the revenue figure, it doesn't really say a lot about a company like SpaceX because they're super CapEx heavy, For every $1 of operating cash flow that they generate, they're spending like $9 on capex. It's not like so SpaceX. It's not like a software company where they where they write the code once and reap the profits forever. No, it's super capital intensive. They have to keep investing in all these heavy physical infrastructure. So a huge chunk of that revenue is gone before it even arrives, just to keep the business running. Now, maybe SpaceX turns profitable, even insanely profitable. I mean, nobody knows the future. They might end up, I don't know, colonizing Mars or mining asteroids, and Grok might become sentient all of a sudden. I mean, yeah, but that is besides the point. At the current price, it's like buying a lottery ticket for 500 grand when the jackpot is only $500,000. Sure, in the best case scenario, you might double your money, but the odds are terrible. I mean, it's fine if you want to play the lottery, just make sure you don't pay $500,000 for a ticket that should cost like a couple of bucks. And always remember, if a stupid gamble pays off, it does not make it less of a stupid gamble. It just makes it a lucky stupid gamble. Anyways, that's it for today's show. If you like this one, please make sure you subscribe so you catch my next videos. Cheers.